Yeah, I don't know, bro. Something about haikyuu really hits different. Is it the healthy male friendships? Is it the healthy male friendships that men allow each other to have, where they allow each other to be emotionally vulnerable instead of toxic with each other, like all the men in your life and my life? Is it that? Is it that? I love haikyuu. Specifically, I love the anime made by production IG and Toho. I love the way it's animated, I love the characters, I love everything about it. And I'm not the only one. Haikyuu is a manga and anime that has developed a huge fandom online, which I think is cool. And there's a ton of online content about haikyuu, especially on this website, but on many others as well, that gets a lot of traction, like a lot of traction. Thus, many of my friends, some younger than me, some older than me, were really into the show. And when I said I was going to watch it, they were excited. So of course I had to watch it because I want to have a wholesome bonding thing with my friends. What I quickly discovered is that the show isn't just really good, it's not just really well made, but it has a lot of really cool themes that I find important. In particular, I was kind of shocked at how much the show made me reflect on my life, my boyhood, my currently being a man, and masculinity in general. In particular, I think a lot of the shows, the animes, the different properties, and just the different cultural elements that we're fed when we're young men teach us the wrong things. They teach us that we can't be sensitive, of course. They teach us that our bonds with other men are meant to be a certain way. They teach us that we're meant to divide and conquer, to succeed, to dominate, to do this, and that. There's all these different things that you can't seem to do as a cishet man, as a man in general, because that's how men are supposed to be, right? Cishet. Cishet? I mean, there's a whole laundry list of things that people will now compile on Twitter, of tweets of people being like, is it gay to do this? It's gay to do that. I don't know, kissing a girl on the lips when she's kissed other men, you basically kissing another dude on the mouth. Isn't that gay? And as if being gay was a bad thing, right? But aside from that, what? But these are the kinds of cultural elements that we were fed. I remember I knew a dude who came by the neighborhood who I thought was really cool. And he was like, you have to have sex before you leave high school or you're a loser. And I was like, oh gosh, I don't want to be a loser. And so I just lived with that kind of pressure in my head for probably the next few years, even after I graduated high school. And that sucked. But it was just many things like that that I realized probably weren't very helpful towards my reflection of self, towards my self-image, towards me being myself and being happy. And so it makes me really happy to see that haikyuu has a different presentation of masculinity. In particular, I want to talk about Hinata Shoyo, the protagonist of the manga / anime, but I will be talking about other characters as well. I just think that Hinata, in his experiences reflected in the show, showcases so many of the different things that I think are really cool to be teaching young men and young boys. I kind of was talking about this a bit in a TikTok that I put out a while ago that actually got ridiculous numbers for me. Like, not like crazy numbers for other people, but for me, you know, almost reaching 80K views is a wild thing. And it made me want more clout, so here I am. But in addition to that, it showed me that a lot of people relate to the idea that, yeah, the healthy male friendships in haikyuu are really cool. So what I aim to do in this video is talk about why I think Hinata is such a healthy male protagonist figure for young men to look at. The first thing I want to talk about when it comes to this character and when it comes to this property that I think is really cool in terms of masculinity is the idea of confidence. Of course, men are supposed to be confident, right? Men are taught that confidence is important, but a certain type of confidence and a certain type of performance of confidence, even if confidence is not present, is what is put on a shelf. For example, the idea that having sex at a young age, before you're even ready to have sex, that's what you should be confident in. You know, being tough, that's what you should be confident in, not crying, not showing your emotions, So I just feel like what's really cool about haikyuu is that you see a lot of different types of confidence displayed, but the confidence is often very healthy. And when it's not healthy, it's shown to be unhealthy, and characters develop. One of the cool things about haikyuu is how characters focus inward with their confidence instead of taking it out on others. Of course, characters are constantly comparing themselves to other characters. It's volleyball. It's a volleyball anime, as you probably know. And being a volleyball anime, that means that players are competing with one another. So they're constantly in competition and comparing. But when they compare to one another, they're not doing so in a way that suggests that they hate others. Sometimes they do, but they kind of come back to earth a lot of the time and realize that what they need to just do is focus on being their best selves. I think that this kind of thing is really cool for bullying prevention. I think it's really important to show kids that, hey, if you're insecure, maybe don't take it out on other people. Bullying is not good. There's a lot of moments actually where bullies are directly like stood up against by some of the protagonists of the anime, and it just goes to show like, okay, these are good characters because yes, they're confident and yes, they compete and compare themselves to others, but they never put down people. They're just competing to try to be their best selves. In particular, Hinata's confidence in not allowing himself to be dismayed when he fails, instead being excited at the prospect of being tested, learning, and getting better from it, is a really great model for anybody to learn from. I can't tell you how many times when I was young, I was discouraged from doing things because I failed at them. Whether it was being a gifted child and failing at the thing I was supposed to be good at, which was school, whatever, or sports and other things like that. My sense of wanting to get better was overpowered by my sense of wanting to avoid embarrassment and wanting to not feed into my insecurity, I suppose. So it was just really cool to see that Hinata, alongside a lot of other characters, was never really discouraged. I mean, there were points where he wanted to quit. There were points where he was embarrassed. And in those moments, such as, the ball boy moment, if you know what I mean, he looks at himself and says, you know what? That's okay. I might not be as good. I might need to learn. And that's awesome because I'm going to learn and I'm going to get better. And that mindset is just amazing. It's amazing, especially for young people to see, like, when you fail, it's okay. It's actually probably a good thing. There are moments when Hinata is proven to not be as good as another character. He's completely intimidated by another character's skill. And instead of him being completely depressed about it, a lot of times, especially as the show progresses, he gets like excited by it. He's like, oh, cool. This guy's better than me. So that's an important lesson in confidence. But there's more to the show. The conversation about confidence leads into a conversation about self-awareness and self-mastery, which I think is also really important. When I say self-awareness, of course I mean awareness of self, knowing oneself, knowing how to be one's best self, etc., etc., knowing your weaknesses, knowing your flaws, and knowing your strengths. Self-mastery, meaning reflecting on oneself and figuring out how am I going to be my better self? What time and effort do I need to put in? And then doing the things instead of actually just thinking about them, which is what I usually do. For example, I am always thinking about how I should be in better shape and then not working out, which I feel like is probably not a good idea. In haikyuu, characters grow to understand what they're strong at and weak at and develop themselves on both ends. Hinata is athletic and therefore good at spiking because he can get up and he can hit the ball hard, which is what he loves to do. And he develops that skill. He learns that actually I can't just hit the ball hard. I should look and notice where the blockers are and place the ball. I should get better at that skill. I should get better at hitting the ball all types of ways, at positioning myself all types of ways, which makes him even better at his strength. But he also looks at his weaknesses, like receiving, and says, I need to get better at those things too. And he puts in countless work in order to make that happen. And like I referred to before, he admires the strengths of others. This is something that comes when you have self-awareness and a willingness to master yourself, is that you look at other people and you, instead of being super jealous and becoming more insecure and feeding into your insecurities, you accept your insecurities, accept where you're not as good as other people, and say, that's awesome. I want to learn from you, or I want to work with you, or I want to have you on my team because you compliment me and get the best out of me. But I also want to talk about what is kind of an elephant in the room when it comes to masculinity, which is treating women with respect. What does it mean? How do you do it? And I feel like people have kind of made respect women a meme, and obviously people have progressed in some way since I was young. I grew up in the aughts, in the 2000s when I was a very young child. But obviously respecting women is still something that a lot of people struggle with somehow. And I think it's because a lot of times things get a little bit more complicated than just being nice to women. And what I really love about haikyuu's male characters is not just that they're nice to women, but that they treat women as equals a lot of the times. And there are moments also where they objectify women. Let's talk about that. There are horny characters in haikyuu, and sometimes I'll admit that I find some of their escapades uncomfortable, but women in the show are only seen being objectified by a select amount of characters who are depicted as being a bit shallow when it comes to romance. And their interactions are still never mean or demeaning. They never put women down about their looks. You'd never see that. Even Tanaka, who is notably uncontrollably lusty for women, is constantly shown admiring qualities of strength, kindness, and intelligence in women, as well as physical beauty. And notably has a storyline with a female character who he befriended as a child and stood up for against bullies who teased her for her height, empowering her to play volleyball and inspiring her to find confidence in the sport. But in regards to Hinata, he's often seen actually similar to Tanaka in his disposition, and similarly, he uses his bright and confident energy to inspire women rather than demean them, even if he finds them attractive. This is reflected in his relationship with Yachi. There's a plot line where Yachi, she's notably very fearful. She has a lot of fears and insecurities, and she's in the same year as Hinata. And Hinata is constantly empowering her to find confidence. Yachi wants to be the junior volleyball manager, and Hinata encourages her to do it, even though she's constantly pushing back against herself in her own head and constantly fearful of what her mother will say. He inspires her to finally stand up to her mother, who's depicted really beautifully, by the way. I mean, her mother could have easily been like a really terrible, mean character, but she's shown as being rough with her daughter in a way that is trying to get the best out of her. She's trying to push her, knowing that her daughter is fearful, so that her daughter can finally sort of build her own confidence and learn how to stand on her own 2 feet. It's a really cool thing that they did that. Regardless, Yachi does it, and she does it with a lot of the help from Hinata. She does it on her own, but Hinata's contributions do bring that out of her a little bit more. And I think that that's a great thing. Hinata's ability to not only be kind to Yachi, but to actually care about what she's interested in and want her to get her best for herself, just as he does for himself, reflects that he sees Yachi as an equal. And so he's frustrated by the things that she's not able to do because he knows of all the things that she can be able to do and just wants her to be her best self and be happy. And he pushes her in that direction. That's reflective of how healthy relationships between men and women can foster. When you see a woman as your equal instead of, wow, I'm going to be nice to her because I think she's really pretty, it's, I will respect the things that she wants to do and help her do it, even if I don't get anything out of it. I think that this is a great thing to teach young men who oftentimes feel frustrated because they want to be nice to women. They think that they're being nice to women, and then they think that, they're finishing last because they're nice guys, or think that it's not paying off, or think that they're constantly, being scrutinized too heavily even though they're trying. It's good to remember that even though you're trying to be nice, that doesn't always mean that you're being nice in the best way. Hinata is showing you that being equal to somebody is more important than being a benevolent actor looking down on somebody and being nice to them, which is a lot of times how we're taught to socialize with women. We're taught to say, oh, you want to be in business? That's awesome. You know what I mean? Instead of actually thinking, okay, how am I going to help you get your career started? How am I going to help you develop in what you need to develop in? Because that's what I would want to do for myself. That's what I would want somebody else to do for me. And that's what I would do with any of my bros. And I'll do the same for a girl. But of course, as alluded to in my TikTok, there's also something else that I think is probably one of the more overwhelming aspects of the cool masculinity you see in haikyuu, and that's how men treat each other. So I've had many male friends growing up. I've lost a lot of male friends. I've been out of touch with a lot of guys because, I've made some great bros, but I've also made a lot of bros that were actually hurting me more than they were helping me, that were putting me down, that were being mean, that were putting people down that was unfair. You deal with a lot of the misogyny and the homophobia that makes you insecure and makes you feel like you need to prove yourself to somebody who doesn't have their mindset in the best way anyway and doesn't have your best interest at heart. What's really cool about the male friendships in haikyuu is that guys have their best interest at heart, even when they're in competition with each other, even when they don't really like each other. They still have their best interests at heart, and they don't act to demean people for things that are unfair. I think a lot of times the idea of putting people down just comes from that central idea that men need to be strong and they need to overpower other people. And a lot of times men who are insecure will do this more. If you're really confident and you're comfortable with yourself, you don't need to put anybody down, because why would you do that? It's a waste of time when you could be doing something helpful. But people who are insecure, regardless of gender, often wants to put other people down so that they can feel better about their placement in relation to the other person. And when this happens in haikyuu, it's immediately shown as bad, even when it's the players on the team when they're younger being bullied, or when it's members of other teams being uncharitable towards other members of other teams. It's great that haikyuu exists because it shows a stronger way of being bros. You have healthy relationships with your bros, understanding their strengths and weaknesses, and encouraging them instead of condemning them when they're unusual to you. What's important to note also is that not every male friendship is the same. Like, not every relationship with every other person is going to be the same. Often we are taught, just in general, even regardless of gender, that we need to have our relationships a certain way. And so when one relationship with one person is a certain way, and it's not exactly how you picture you're supposed to be friends with a person, you often feel uncomfortable. But the reality is that your relationships, your dynamics with different people, even if you're very close friends with all of them, are going to be different. Hinata and Kageyama like each other, but they'll never show it because they're ruthlessly competitive with one another. And that's okay, because that helps them. They learn how to make that competitiveness work to help themselves and each other. And they also learn when at times they need to let it go, when they need to encourage each other, when they need to be there for each other. Another example of this is Bokuto of Fukurodani, who often has strong relationships with his teammates in that they understand what makes him tick, often being frustrated by his personality and his tendencies, but seeking to learn more about him and help him be his best self, thus helping the team while keeping him in check at times. I think the storyline with Bokuto is so cool because this is a guy that could easily be overzealous. It could easily be a depiction of a character that you hate. But his ego and his overzealousness is charming because it's shown to be a little bit silly. And you see other characters who are friends with him and genuinely care about him have an importance in what he does, so you don't just think he controls everything. It's unrealistic and unhealthy to expect every person to have the same mindset, to have the same energy, and to have the same feelings about how to play volleyball, whether or not we're actually playing volleyball, or volleyball is a metaphor for life. Sometimes you're going to have friends that are seemingly very egotistical and full of themselves. But as long as they're not hurting you or being hateful towards anybody, then it's cool. Because a lot of times you'll need that confidence to siphon from them. And a lot of times they'll need that confidence because it'll help them activate their best selves. There are other people that prefer to be quiet, that prefer to operate machine-like. And that's cool too, because that's what they do. And so maybe your relationship with them won't be as much discussion. Maybe you won't bond over many things. But as long as you know that you're there for each other and you're helping each other, and you don't feel like that person's hurting you or being hateful, then it's cool. At the beginning, Hinata is very focused on others' reflection of him. He's very focused on being the tiny giant. He wants to be the tiny giant. He wants to be really cool. And that's why he gets inspired to play volleyball in the first place. He wants to make people like him, ultimately. And that never really goes away, just like it doesn't really go away in ourselves. We all want to make people like us too. But Hinata slowly becomes more and more focused on just liking other people, getting the best out of them, and having them help him get the best out of himself. The ball boy plotline is a perfect example of this, where he could have been extremely salty that he wasn't getting the shine. He used the opportunity to learn from others. Even when he's in rivalry with someone and there's animosity, as is the case with Ushijima, he builds a respect for them, never insulting them or demeaning them, but also not letting them get in the way of his goals, and then showing respect for them, win or loss. Ultimately, even if haikyuu is about volleyball, and even though it shows so many characters that are desperate to win, the show is demonstrating that it's more than winning or losing. Winning or losing isn't the most important thing. Winning and losing are things that we can't control oftentimes. Sometimes we're not tall enough, sometimes we messed up. That's life. But what's more important is that we push ourselves to just do our best in the scenario that we're in, with the tools that we have. And it's important also to enjoy what we do. Even if it doesn't reward us with success all the time, maybe we just love to do it. And maybe we just love the feeling of trying. I think the plotline with Tsukishima and him learning from Bokuto is really important in that regard. So befuddled by why other players are trying so hard to win, even to the point where they're pushing themselves to exhaustion. And what he learns is, it's not really even about winning, it's about the feeling of winning. and chasing for it and trying your best, knowing that it could happen. So that even when you fail, you're always ready to try again because you just want to get back to that feeling. It could be seen as an addiction, but in reality, it's life. We're not guaranteed wins. We're not guaranteed success. And honestly, there's always going to be somebody out there that's more badass than we are, even when we're really good at something. But what are we going to do in that moment? Are we going to sit there and say, we're not good enough, let's stop? No, we got to chase after it. We got to try our best because it's fun to try your best. And it's fun to know that when you put in a lot of work, you can see yourself getting better and you can see yourself having opportunities to win. And when you finally get that moment, even if it's just one block or one spike, it's so gratifying. When characters lose, they're shown devastated, but then training harder, keeping their relationships and looking towards future opportunities. Characters who have less than glorious pasts and have since moved on from volleyball look to contribute wisdom and support to younger generations, though still doing their best in their current lives. All of these things make me really excited for haikyuu to be shown to a new generation of people. I'm really glad that kids are going to grow up with this show. I'm really glad that we have this show. I'm really glad that older people have this show. I hope that people watch it and if they enjoy it, extract some meaning from it, even if it's different from the meaning that I get. As long as it's meaning that helps them do positive things and have a better life. Because there's so much meaning to extract. There's so much that the writers have done in order to make this show full of meaning and lessons and ideas that are really cool. And they never hit you over the head with them. I mean, they do, but like, it's never so preachy that you're like, okay, this doesn't feel genuine. It's genuine every time. And even if you don't get it, sometimes one moment will change your perspective on something for the rest of your life. Now, art doesn't necessarily need to do that, but it's really cool when art does do that. And I like that. And I like haikyuu. And if you liked this video, feel free to hit the like button and comment and let me know your thoughts. I'll be doing more videos like this from now on. I'll talk about things like anime and K-pop and dramas and other things, but mainly those things, I suppose. And so I would love for you guys to support it if you're into it. And for those of you who have disagreements with me, leave a comment. Let me know what you think. We'll talk. I also do streams 4 times a week on the Baby Gang YouTube channel, youtube.com/babygang, as well as twitch.tv/babyganglive. That's BBYGANG, not BABY. When we stream, we try to make it a chill space where we just talk about current events and different things that are on our minds. I like to keep it welcoming for new people, for old people, for people who have all types of different backgrounds. And so if you'd like to join in, please do.